Buddhist Economics. Intended learning outcomes of this session are: understand the concept of Western economics. Understand the criticisms about the Western economics. Understand the basic concepts of the Buddhist economics. Traditional and modern economics. We know that we are living in more complex society. The complexity of the society brings the complexity of human behavior. Basically, two forces help to create human complexity. One is inner complexity, which consists of our feelings and thoughts. In addition to our inner complexity, outside world makes the complexity. Good example is the marketing peoples. They make numerous arousals to purchase different products and services through media. All are dependent on the economic condition. Today economic is based on the Western philosophy. Hope to discuss the Western-oriented economic philosophy from this section. Economics can be defined as a science which studies human behavior as a relationship between ends and scarce means which alternative uses. Lionel Robbins, 2002. It is important to note that economics defines ends and means primarily in material terms, which moreover can be quantified in monetary terms. Immaterial and non-monetary values are considered subjective and outside its scope. By starting that economic means are naturally limited and scarce. Economic theory accepts a natural element of competition for scarce resources. Human is relatively intelligent class evolved from primitive apes motivated by lusts and aggression. Our intelligence has taught us to behave socially, but fundamentally we are selfish beings subject to the law of survival of fittest. Therefore, traditional economic thoughts based on the scarce resources and market competition. What the economic expectation, standard of living. Today's economic view. Sustainable development. Sustainable development is as development which meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. However, it is difficult to see the sustainable development in the world economy. Political and economic leaders have embraced free market capitalism as a golden formula. Today the G7 or World Industrialized Countries, International Monetary Fund and World Bank prescribe the world a neoclassical recipe of privatization, decentralization, market reform, government interference. Government interference in markets will only lead to inefficient, wasteful government bureaucracies. As history, the liberation or laissez-faire approach will allow markets to increase wealth, promote innovation and optimize production. Current economy is increasingly clear that our economies are inherently flawed, arid. While substantial wealth is generated mostly by a minority leader in developed countries, the majority of the world population remains poor. The gap between rich and poor keeps growing in all societies. Environmental degradation seems irreversible. Drugs and new forms of slave trade prosper. Corruption and corporate fraud are widespread. Stock markets are running into global casinos. War is increasingly economic, motivated by either the lack or the protection of wealth. Now we have to revisit the assumption of the traditional and modern economy. Classical economics define the world in things, of separate building blocks. Human beings are isolated consumers and producers interacting at market driven by monetary gains. In spiritual tradition, spiritual teachings point out there is reality, no independent things. Human are viewed as being part of a larger whole with which they can communicate by opening up their hearts and minds. Different holistic views. Modern physics, the universe consists of combined patterns of energy. Einstein's favorite sayings, the field generates the object, not vice versa. That is, whole systems give rise to specific things, not the other way around. Cartesian worldview, we can only know reality by knowing specific part. Einstein discovered that in order to know things, we need to know the whole from which they originate. We are not isolated hard and fast physical things, but more like light beings, or energy flows, continuously interrelating and changing. Then, we are more like intangibles. Therefore, intangibles can't be measured in classical economic models. Traditional and modern economics and modern knowledge economy. Economic strategies are built around the possession of material things such as land, labor and capital. Spiritual traditions and modern sciences claim the opposite. They recognize the unlimited potential in every sentient being, the potential to be whole and enlightened. The key in modern knowledge economy is not consideration about material possession. Know-how and creativity, the domain of the mind. Most successful business strategies focus less on things but more on how to manage them. All technical and social innovation is based on what is now phrased as intellectual capital. Conclusion about traditional or classical economic thoughts. It has turned the 19th century mechanistic matter-only worldview. We should revisit long-held axioms. The traditional concept that we are simply competitive beings follow scarce material resources is incorrect. Intangible values are equally important for our well-beings. These intangibles are stored in the mind, free from physical constraints and therefore potentially of unlimited supply. Happiness of the current economy is not merely determined by what we have, how much consume, but also by, for happiness, what we know, how we can manage, how we can be created. Ultimately by who we are, so not by having, but by being. Therefore, we are human being after all. Human nature and motivation. What kind of beings are we? Happy or unhappy? Altruistic or selfish? Compassionate or competitive? Modest or greedy? Driven to seek short-term pleasure? Seeking meaning? A higher purpose? A longer-term state of happiness? Economists have accepted the principles of selfish individualism. The more the individual consumes, the better off he will be. He consumes out of perpetual needs, which if unmet make him innately unhappy. Economic growth is achieved when individuals consume more and more so that demand and output is not given a room for altruism. Altruism incur for no conceivable benefits, individual have to scarify. Scarification of individual for the community. In future, when society practice the altruism, individual can enjoy the help given from the community. Altruism is the core of our practice and it is the cheapest and most effective insurance for our future. Compassion will make us happy. Compassion can only work if we accept an altruistic attitude. If compassion is harmony with our essence, we can actually enjoy being compassionate. If we are inherently selfish, any attempt to develop a compassionate attitude would be self-defeating. Compassion is helping to effective empathy on the human mind, body, health and relationships, and also our well-being. Compassionate frame of mind has positive effect on our mental and physical health as well as our social life. Lack of empathy has been found to cause or aggravate serious social, psychological and even physical disorders. Recent research on stress shows that people who only seek short-term pleasure are more prone to stress than those who seek a higher purpose, who seek meaning rather than pleasure. Disregarding short-term selfish needs is actually a source of longer-term happiness. Then, classical economic notion of selfish individualism upside down. Main human impulses, competition and consumption. Competition and consumption have sidestepped spiritual and moral issues. Economists have overlooked that the more we consume, the happier we are. According to economics, market will bring us all the things that we want. Our contentment is obtained by the senses. Consuming material goods leads sensual experiences. This feeds an emotion of sensual desire. At the same time, competitors are longing after desire the same things on the limited resources. Hence we experience fear, the fear of losing out, the fear that our desire will not be satisfied. Mechanism of expanding capitalism is based by two strong emotions. First, desire. Second, fear. Buddha taught, emotions are based on ignorance and a misconception of reality. They can be removed by the understanding of reality. According to Buddhism, happiness is an inner experience, available to anyone, regardless wealth or poverty. Fundamentally there is nothing that we lack. By developing the mind and inequalities, we can experience perfect wholeness and contentment. Finally, if we share with others, we will find that we are not surrounded by competitors. Others depend on us as we depend on them.